I would like to call this meeting to order. It is Saturday, April 13th. We are here for our Board of Education special board meeting. Reverend Matias, will you do the roll call?
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Schottky.
Here.
Ms. Williams.
Present.
Dr. Baker.
Here.
Ms. Davis.
Here.
Dr. Flores.
Present.
Ms. Lewis. Present. Reverend Matias is present. Mr. Ross.
Present.
President Grant.
Present.
We have a quorum.
All right. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Support.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Do we have public comment for agenda and non-agenda items?
We do not at this time.
Wait, I think there's, you need to fill out a card.
Yeah, up at the
At
table.
either end, if someone can get you that.
Good morning on a Saturday.
Would you
All
mind
right.
giving me that card? Sir,
So,
would you mind giving me that card? And we can,
Pardon me?
would you mind giving me that
Oh.
card once she can?
Here you go. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
So I appreciate the opportunity to speak before you this morning. I appreciate all the hard work that each and every one of you are doing through this process. I know it can be draining, maybe exhausting at times, and I want to encourage you to hold steadfast because I think we still have some more work to do. I'm not up here to knock anybody or to suggest that candidates are not worthy candidates. I'm just here to suggest that maybe they are not the best candidates for Grand Rapids Public Schools at this time. So with that being said, let me begin by saying I had several opportunities to listen to both Dr. Talley and Dr. Horton. I invited students to attend one of the sessions at GRPS University and was intrigued by some of the student comments on the way back to Westwood Middle School. I think that Dr. Talley reminds me of a previous superintendent with GRPS that there seems to be an outward polished appearance and presentation and mannerism, but without a lot of depth behind it. And I felt as though Dr. Horton maybe communicated a little bit more effectively at a grassroots level, but I also felt as though he presented himself more as a hired gun, and so he travels from district to district. I'm not sure if that is our position right now as a district. I think there are other districts in the state of Michigan, I think of Battle Creek, who might need more of a hired gun than what we are looking for in terms of our leadership. I think there still is a leader out there that has elementary school experience, that understands, in particular right now, the need for a focus on literacy at the elementary level. I think that there is a leader out there who understands the nuances of middle school and the situation that a couple of our comprehensive middle schools find themselves in as we continue to work towards improving student achievement and closing the achievement gap. I think that there is a leader out there that understands high school and what it takes to make gains in achievement, and has demonstrated with empirical evidence about those gains and what it looks like. I think that there is a leader out there who maybe has experience coming from another country or whose parents came from another country, and so can understand some of the cultural aspects that our West Michigan and Grand Rapids public schools student community can identify with. I think that there is still an opportunity to find that leader. I think that there, both of these candidates did not leave an impression of inspiration to the colleagues that I spoke to. No one came away from listening to either one of them feeling empowered. I think that we are looking for that leader to reveal itself, and so I hope you can take the time to continue to do the diligent work in finding that leader and presenting that leader to my colleagues and myself. Thank you. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Mr. Branson. Okay. See.
Any other public comment?
There's no more public
We have
comments
no
than I
more
have
cards.
cards. We do have cards if you would like to make comments.
Okay. Well, now we are at our special order of business, and I would like to start out by letting everyone just have a moment after we've had time to review all of the feedback and to just take some time to ourselves to review the interviews on Monday. And I would like us all to just take a moment and to share what our boiled down thoughts are. So you can share your thoughts, but at the end, I would really like for us each to give some type of conclusion for where we are feeling so that we all know where our colleagues are, and then we can lead from there with a discussion. Dr. Flores, would you mind beginning? Or we can...
It's fine. My position really hasn't changed much. We interviewed a wide field of candidates, hired a consultant team that is professional and engaged and with a good reputation throughout the state, and they did their job. They cast a net. They brought in as many candidates as they could find. The candidates that we interviewed or we selected, they all seem to have something positive about them. We're down to two people. For me, it's simple. I want to see this district empowered, continued on the path of success, continued on a path to increased graduation rates and high achievement rates. And I think that Dr. Horton has proven that he has those abilities. He has that work experience. He has the successes in his background to support the level of educational leadership that we need in this district now. And so my position has not changed. I favor Dr. Horton. I think he's not necessarily a hired gun. I beg to differ with the perception. I think we need someone with assertive leadership that is willing to take on and grapple with the difficult task of raising achievement and raising literacy rates and graduation rates. And in his background, he has demonstrated that. again, I will point to, to the 2 volumes of feedback that we got, and the majority of these responses indicate that Dr. Horton is the better candidate. And so I'll defer to the public in this regard, that we have substantial evidence to support Dr. Horton's candidacy, and I think that we should offer this job. I would hate to have us lose a qualified candidate thinking that there are people out there that are more qualified. And I think that's the risk that we run.
Thank you, Dr. Flores. Dr. Baker?
First, I have to say that I've been very impressed with this board throughout this process. I think that this is, as I think Ms. Schottky referred to it, on-the-job learning or on-the-job training. And when we're done with the job, we won't have to do it anymore. So, so it's a really difficult one, especially considering we have 2 brand-new board members who, the first day on the job, they had to begin doing the most difficult work without any really prior training or preparation. And we, I think, have carried ourselves very well. Everyone at this board table has carried themselves very well in our conversations. I would say I'm also been very impressed with the community, and I think that it's especially, I guess it was Monday now, all of the participation at GRPS University, the volumes of feedback that we have, the emails that we've gotten, the phone calls, the texts, it's pretty remarkable. I think it's very important. If we had gone through this in a vacuum and no one had paid attention, then it would be very disturbing. And so we have a community that is very engaged. And I think that we have a community that's very anxious about this decision. And so that's the number one emotion, whether people really like one of the 2 candidates very strongly or neither. Everyone expresses anxiety, and I think 2 things from that. One is it expresses how precarious I think city school systems are. If we make the wrong decision, there's consequences fairly immediate, and people are very much afraid of that. And this community has experienced leadership that has not been very effective, and they don't want to go back to that. And so there's a lot of anxiety. And I think that everybody on the board has been carrying that anxiety, and it makes it very difficult. I think that we have, I can't say I disagree that much at all with what Dr. Flores said. We have 2 qualified candidates, and I came to appreciate a lot of things about both of them. There's some individual critiques and challenges. I thought that Dr. Talley came with a fairly prescriptive plan. He offered expertise. He had incredible analysis, but oftentimes he seemed to offer expertise in areas that he didn't seem to know, and that were actually incorrect. And it wasn't so much that he didn't know, it was that he was willing to offer that expertise in areas that I think that gives me the impression of whether or not people would have the opportunity to challenge or to create a thoughtful exchange of ideas. Dr. Horton was very appealing. I got an email from a friend that knew him from Chicago who talked about his care for students. I have no doubt for that. I came to really believe that he learns quickly. He does a lot of great work. Certainly, his relationship to students seemed to be pretty strong. But I wasn't, but oftentimes the data that he presented either seemed too large. I see this in higher education and K-12 often, where data can be used to illustrate evidence of lots of things. I didn't necessarily think that his data represented the final analysis that it was he that provided the change that happened. I was impressed with his high school program that in East St. Louis that led to students having a plan post-high school, although I didn't necessarily like the implications of the way the data was presented. It seemed to be more broad than it actually was in terms of acceptance rates to college. My major concern with both candidates is that, looking over our qualifications, we spent a lot of time in November, December, getting feedback from the community. And there were two areas. There were lots of reasons. There was lots of things that some people wanted people from here. Some people wanted somebody new. There were lots of things that the community didn't necessarily agree on. But there were two things that the community adamantly talked about. One was to address the challenges in special education. And it's certainly any Google search of media articles of Grand Rapids Public Schools over the last year would have showed that this district has had challenges with special education, and that the new superintendent would have to address those challenges. And number two, on almost every page in some capacity, there was an explanation that we needed to address the needs of a diverse student population, that was specifically a growing Latino population and a growing Spanish language population. Neither candidate showed much expertise, or to some extent even much curiosity in terms of addressing those needs. And we have had on this board heated debates about what the best way to do education for especially Spanish-speaking students, but students from other languages as well. And I didn't see either candidate address those. Now, I think that could be understood if we hadn't expressed that was a concern for our district. But the candidates were asked to read the community feedback. Any candidate would have read the community feedback, and how you missed that, especially that one. Special ed wasn't mentioned as often, but it was still mentioned quite a bit. But what to do with English language learners was a very strong component of almost every page of that report, and it wasn't really addressed. For those reasons, I think that, again, if I look at this, the community prefers Dr. Horton to Dr. Talley. However, most of the conversations I had was, if I had to choose, or this is the better candidate of the two, and we don't have to choose a candidate today. We get to, this isn't an election. We're not choosing between two candidates from different political parties. We get to choose the candidate that's best. And I'm not convinced, and I haven't heard, really short of Dr. Flores, I haven't heard anyone say adamantly that one candidate is the person that we should hire. Most people, I say one candidate is good, and even though most people prefer Horton, people who I trust and respect and I think know education very well talk very strongly about the qualifications and that Dr. Talley brings to the district. But no one says, I'm convinced that this is the right person. And I want to hand over, with this anxiety, with the precariousness of city school districts, with a knowledge of what this community was like, not just this district, but what this community was like when we had an adversarial relationship with a superintendent. We can't afford to do that. This community is constant, and I lose sleep worrying about handing over the keys to this district to someone that I don't know for sure is going to carry us forward. Sorry for that. It was a bit longer than the short comments, but that was every time, if I woke up in the middle of the night, that was what was going through my head, all of these thoughts. And it will continue going through my head until we know what we're doing. So anyway, that's all I have.
Ms. Davis.
I'm so glad you talked for a while.
No.
Oh, you look like she's got a thesis here.
No, this has been quite the process, and just like you had said, I have been up every night doing research and thinking and getting excited and also questioning things. And so I come today, my personal conclusion after, like I said, much work this week, is that Dr. Horton would be a great fit for the district, and he has what it takes to move us forward. I'm excited about him, and I want to share with the board the reasons that I'm excited about him, but I also agree with Dr. Baker. I'm not coming this morning ready to push for Dr. Horton without hearing from the rest of the board members, because it's really important to me that more than the majority of us are excited about him, and I need to feel that to be completely certain about my point, about my view. So I'm just going to speak to his second interview first. His first interview wasn't very impressive to me, but I left, or right after his second interview, I just felt very impressed with the candidate. I thought his presentation embraced our transformation plan and showed that he did his homework. He was well organized, he was engaging. He also gave us some glimpses of what he could add to an already working district plan. He showed that he knows teachers and appreciates them. His answer to the teacher morale question was both realistic and refreshing to me. And as all of you know, I've been teaching for almost 15 years now. I liked that he said that he doesn't want teaching to be prescriptive, and that you can't reduce the art of teaching to a science. That was just something that really struck me, especially coming from a data guy. So he shows knowledge of, but most importantly, motivation to and experience in developing both mental health and equity-based initiatives. My master's program is in school counseling, and I was just really excited about his mentioning of bully and trauma-informed education and professional development. I'm shaking. He highlighted community, parent, and staff partnerships in many of his answers. He talked about maintaining and increasing parent university offerings and attendance to those programs. He talked about developing initiatives for staff, students, and families through local organizations and creating a parent superintendent advisory committee. He also mentioned an idea about having each board member pick a month where we would choose a community to engage with, and even spoke of knocking on doors with us, which I thought was just wonderful. He seemed tech savvy, and that was evident in his presentation and his mention of using Facebook Live to communicate with parents, and in his introduction of the Domo during his presentation, which was the data-based app. So that was based on his interview, and then throughout the week I was just re-looking at the references that we were given at the beginning of this, and I found myself just gaining momentum and excitement for him. His current assistant superintendent says that he's collaborative, and in speaking to, like, one of my worries was he talked about all these initiatives, but how many of those initiatives did he actually bring to the table and follow through? And this reference said that he brought coherence to teams, he brought effective use of data strategies, he brought progress monitoring, he brought clear definitions of success criteria, which is so important in education. He has checks and balances for accountability, but also provides lots of feedback and support. And one highlight of that reference letter was, in the 9 months that he's been with us, I've learned more than in the previous 6 years in my position. And then other reference letters of his colleagues say that he builds people up, he's good at tapping into talents, great at making decisions and explaining them, and most importantly for me as an educator is following through. We're presented with tons of initiatives. Every day, every year, there's something new. But if we don't follow through to fidelity, things just get put on the back burner. So that's really important to me. I also thought it was wonderful that one of his references was the teacher union president, who said he was a pleasure to work with. He was respectful, professional, and he had a lot of interactions with teachers and worked well with them. Moving on to the focus groups, I thought that they highlighted many of the things I've already mentioned that were highlighted in his references and in his interview. He gave specifics for data. He has teaching experience. They appreciated his humor. He was able to draw people in the focus groups. He has urban experience, which was one of our main things in our selection criteria. He's authentic and confident, but also down to earth, they said. He's system focused. He has the passion to inspire. And they highlighted his importance he highlighted the importance of trust. And one of the focus group members said they quoted him saying something about trust, education is only as good as the trust that's developed. So in summing that up, I just want to mention a couple of the worries I had initially with him and where I'm at with those. I think I previously mentioned that I was worried about the amount of initiatives that he presented, especially in his first interview. That's kind of why I walked away not too excited. And I was worried about whether or not he was with those initiatives from inception and how many he helped develop to fidelity. But after my research, it seems like his references support that he makes things happen and that he grows leaders. I was also concerned as a fine arts educator with both candidates' answers concerning the fine arts. I didn't think either of the answers were strong, and I didn't get any feedback from fine arts experts advocating for either of the candidates. I do feel a little bit better about this area, just given the fact that everything points to him being a strong communicator and a strong leader, and everything points to him growing leaders. And I think in the fine arts, we're used to being in our own little bubble. But if we have principals and people in the cabinet, at the cabinet level that at least can see our capabilities and help us grow and help highlight the fine arts, that's what we really need. We need people who can communicate with us, who see the value of our program. Maybe it's not their top priority, but they help us grow and move forward. And then my last concern, and that I heard from a lot of people, was that he doesn't know Grand Rapids. However, I feel that he has the drive and personality to jump in and build relationships quickly and get to know Grand Rapids. He has a track record of being able to communicate with anyone, and I feel like if we're going with somebody who's not already a part of our community, that he would be a good choice as far as that goes. So that being said, I'm not 100% convinced he is the best candidate for us, but I am excited about him, and I'm ready to hear what the rest of you have to say because, like I said, I would appreciate much more than just the majority being excited about a candidate before we put one in place. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ross.
I guess I'll begin recognizing that probably neither I or anyone who's invested in this process will ever be 100% on anyone that comes before us. There's really just no way of knowing if any one individual is, again, that person per se. Obviously, the impact that whomever that is has on the district as the years unfold will really determine if our decision is accurate. Of course, the only thing we can do is go with our best thinking at any given time. And I will say, after really deliberating over this daily since Monday, I am also at a point where I do have confidence in Dr. Horton. The reasons for that, I do genuinely think, believe, and feel that he's a system thinker. I appreciate the varied experiences he has in the classroom, at the building level, at other levels of central office administration. I appreciated the excitement that he seemed to have regarding getting to know the Grand Rapids community, as he spoke about the support that we have from the Student Advancement Foundation and other foundations that he met with. That sort of, I sense sort of a glimmer in his eye about the possibilities and connecting with other leadership here in our community. I definitely sense that and believe that he's a solid communicator, one who is authentic in his communication, one that I think others could be authentic with in their communication. I felt a strength of leadership, if you would, not so much a strength where there's a autocratic sort of perspective, but a strength where I think there'd be a healthy spirit of accountability. I think personally that is one of the components that will be good for GRPS as far as taking our district to the next level per se. I think there's a myriad of uber talented people from top to bottom in the district. But I'll be candid and also think that there's probably more productivity that can be gotten out of some of those talented people. And I think a fresh perspective from our leadership would probably help in that regard. I also found them to be knowledgeable, and similar to Ms. Davis, initially I was concerned that maybe a little too knowledgeable in the sense, sort of a guy with this toolbox full of different things that he was just eager to pull out the bag at any given moment. But after listening more over the second interview, I got a sense that it's not so much just pulling random things out of the toolbox, but being able to draw upon those things as needed, when there's a specific issue at hand. And I definitely felt there would be more of a sense of maybe a focused direction than I originally thought. And I guess with that focused direction, I do think there was an appreciation and respect for what we're currently doing in Grand Rapids, but at the same time, an ability to, again, pull things out of that toolbox to further some of those things that we're doing here in Grand Rapids. In general, I just felt he was a balanced yet independent thinker. I thought he also, again, just had a good spirit of communication, accountability, et cetera, but also was not a super serious thing, but some of his responses said to me that he took the time to even understand things that are going on within the state. He was familiar with our teacher evaluation piece and familiar with the legislation that is looking to make some adjustments with that, and he just seemed to, his perspective in that definitely was the perspective that we share as a district in our legislative platform, and I just really thought that was a good sort of balance per se. So all in all, again, I do have confidence in Dr. Horton. Again, similar to Ms. Davis, I would not begrudge my colleagues if they were not at the same point as far as their own individual confidence. And I think if we were to move forward with Dr. Horton, I think it would be appropriate to this community to continue to try to produce a sense of comfort and confidence in others by maybe considering a site visit to one of his past districts and really getting some boots on the ground to talk to folks that maybe weren't part of his recommendation list, to really get some other authentic and genuine perspective, because by all means, this is not an easy decision. It's a very important decision, but it is one that I know that we'll never really be 100% confident with, but hopefully, in retrospect, whatever decision we make, we'll be confident that we made the best decision.
Ms. Shockey.
Well, I'd like to first say thank you to my colleagues and certainly to the community as well for this week of time and the ability to reflect and discern and listen. If your weeks were anything like mine, you did a lot of listening this week. Listening for me came from our business community. It came from surrounding districts who wanted me to have insight and had connections actually to our candidates. And it came, of course, from our own Grand Rapids community. And if there's one thing I am certain of, it is that there is uncertainty. Actually different from my colleagues who have currently spoke, I heard a lot of support for Dr. Talley. I heard things from those who are connected to his current districts, things like he is brilliant, he is phenomenal, he understands how to handle conflict. And then I heard positive things about Dr. Horton as well from those that know him in his district, that he is good at what he does. So once again, if there's one thing that was certain, it is uncertainty. Just like Dr. Baker said, we are learning on the job. Not one of us on this Board of Education has gone through this process before. And like anything that I do for the first time, there is always something I would be doing different if I could do it again. And I find myself in that feeling in this process time and time again. Gosh, I would have done that a little different if I could do this again. When I think about our current district, I am looking for a stabilizer and an energizer and an individual with a growth mindset. And I think there are pieces of those in both the candidates, but I wasn't yet convinced that either of them are that thing. I think our district still is fragile. We have seen tremendous growth in our last 7 years. But make no mind, that can go the other way. And without someone who is deeply committed to stabilizing what we currently have and growing from here, I am worried about what could happen to our children in Grand Rapids. I was so eager to hear why Grand Rapids, and I didn't hear that necessarily in either candidate. I heard of their extraordinary qualifications. I heard of programs and processes that they know will work, and of innovations that I thought were incredible. And perhaps this is the only child in me. Of course, I always want to be special, unique, and important. But I want someone who's hungry for us, because we deserve to be special, unique, and important. Our children, our staff, this district, this city deserves that. And I was still waiting to hear why they were so hungry for us. Again, like Dr. Baker, in the conversations I've had over the last week, it was a lot of, if I had to choose, or between the two, here is who I favor. And I don't want to settle on that. So I will come and go from this seat, and I will come and go from Grand Rapids Public Schools. Hopefully this person that we choose will not come and go as quickly, I'm sure, as I will. But I will carry with me this decision for a long time. And as I come and go from Grand Rapids Public Schools and this Board of Education, I want to be able to reflect on this time and be confident in the process that I chose and the decision that I made. And I will never regret taking time and discernment to make a wise choice. Both of our candidates are great. They wouldn't have made it in front of us if they weren't great. I said this early on, and I think either could make exceptional members of our team, but I do not yet have the confidence that either of them can make our exceptional next superintendent. And so today, that is where I'm at. I'm not there yet. So I do not yet have the confidence to move forward with either today. Thank you.
Reverend Matias. I forgot I had that power to do that.
Just like, is she? Can I? No, I can't. Community and board members, what a privilege it is to sit in this seat. I was just thinking, I never would have thought, coming from urban Chicago, that I would be in a place like this, seated in a situation where, coming from a public school, that I would have an opportunity to choose a superintendent or be part of voting for a superintendent. Being bilingual, urban, Hispanic, and all those things. What a tremendous board we have. I think we have seated here just vast experience and knowledge in various aspects of education, and that's exciting. I think all of us here are serious about making the right decisions for our district. I've been in Grand Rapids, transported from Chicago for over 18 years. And so I've grown to love this city, and we chose to raise our kids in the public sector, in our public schools. So we invested 4 of our children who have now graduated in our college bound through GRPS. So we invested, and we put our time in, so to speak, as a family. I was impressed with both candidates, and certainly we had over 30 that had applied. Unfortunately, none of them were Hispanic, which I felt was lacking in that. The few that were really put on the bottom of the totem pole. So I felt like more work needed to be done in bringing continued diversity to our district. And certainly we're saying here that one of the arenas are that our district is increasingly more Hispanic and certainly diverse. I think that our city and our parents who have chosen to go to either different districts because of choice are waiting on the fringes to see what we're doing and investing. We have quite a unique city of refugees that come to our city from different arenas that don't go to our public schools, although I feel like it's one of the best choices for them. And so I feel like there's a lot of folks waiting. We have made tremendous strides in 7 years. And I feel like we're in the cusp of continued growth, but also breaking through some of the barriers that we still have. Although I think that I heard a lot of public, I reached out to folks that I know in Chicago about one of the candidates, and there was a lot of positive things to say about the candidate as he was there early on. And sifting through a lot of the information that was given to us, feedback, it seems that our community is concerned about both candidates in terms of how they would settle into this position and then actually take the reins. We would yet wait to see that. I think that one of the things that I was impressed about is that both candidates talked about the need to look at the social, emotional needs of our students. Things like trauma-informed mental health, those pieces came about. We've done that in spattered amounts in our district. Parent engagement was another arena. Again, in the public sphere, we don't require parents to be engaged in that sense, but that is so needed. Partnerships, I think both of the candidates were quite surprised at the amount of engagement that was being given to this district by foundations vested in expanding what limited resources the district had. And I felt like that light bulb was turning on both of them, like, oh my gosh, if I had this much opportunity or access to that, I would figure out how to balance some of the budgetary needs of our district with what these other folks could bring to the table. And after a whole lot of talking, calls from all over, I'm really undecided about both of the candidates. I feel like there was some strength that both of them gave, but not enough for me to say either or to our district. I don't think that, or I should say, I'm not afraid in this one vote to wait and figure out what we need to do. I do think that we need to vet more. If site visits would be the answer to that, and really looking at how that person would further fit into our district in terms of how we define that, then I would be open to pursuing that with either one of our candidates. But right now, I'm really undecided because I feel like there are other candidates out there, and we needed to see that. I feel like the agency we chose should have brought others to that, and we heard things after the fact about candidates, and so that was concerning for me as a board member, and then feedback both from our community and then the broader communities out there in terms of these candidates. So I'm struggling with that and how we move forward. So.
Thank you, Reverend Matias. Ms. Williams?
Well, not to be redundant and expound on everything so many of my colleagues have already stated. My thoughts about this, I was thinking about as an alumni of GRPS, what my experience was like and how I felt and what the leadership was like at that time. And I think Dr. Horton exhibited those things that I experienced. I think if he was here in '89, he would have fit right in. I think he would have been a rock star then. I do believe he can be a very standout superintendent for us. Things that impacted me was to look at the comments between the first and the second interview after the focus groups as well. To see people change their mind about him, I saw that a lot. I think he made an impression in the second interview that maybe he didn't make in the first. But for me as an investigator, from the time I saw his resume, it jumped off the page for me. Literally. There was not one candidate in all of those packets of information that we received that jumped off the page but him. And to see that he is in this final candidate's position, I'm going to still trust my investigative skills and what I know, and I would be in support of Dr. Horton. I think he can bring community to this school district that we have not seen for a long time. He's teachable. At the same time, he was able to educate us. He demonstrated his ability to get in the trenches and at the same time to innovate and to lead. And those are the things that I personally am looking for. Those are the type of leadership qualities that the administration in '89 brought. And I felt valued in GRPS. I felt community in GRPS in 1989. And thus, as I sit here on the board representing so many people from our community who is looking to restore that, I'm going to trust what I know about this district from my personal experience, as well as what our community is stating. And I am going to be in support of going forward with Dr. Horton. I did also mention I'd like to see him in his setting and to be able to hear some feedback from the community he currently works in or a district he's previously worked in, to kind of hear what they're saying. And sometimes when you're in that community, you hear the good and the bad, whether people intend to share that with you or not. So I'd like to do a site visit if that's something that the board is open to before we, if we come to the point of extending the offer to a candidate. I'd like to do that. That's all.
Thank you. Ms. Lewis?
Yes, I felt as though I listened very carefully. I went over all of the resumes that we were given and listened carefully to the first and the second interviews. And I do believe that Dr. Talley and Dr. Horton were the best of those candidates. My involvement, of course, here, as I see it, is that I have two granddaughters who are in Grand Rapids Public Schools, and they're probably in Grand Rapids Public Schools because my son-in-law and daughter says, well, what should we do with the kids? And my gut feeling is you send your kids to public school, you send your kids to the neighborhood school, and so off they went to Aberdeen. And we really, my daughter, my son-in-law have never, ever indicated to me that that wasn't the right decision. And I really and truly believe one of the reasons why I felt so strongly about sending kids to public schools is because I'm a public school teacher, and I believe in public schools. And also, I had heard a great deal about the kinds of things that were taking place in Grand Rapids, and I was excited to have my girls in a place where they would meet other kinds of people and have other kinds of experiences. And I was looking forward to those things for my girls, and those kinds of things have happened for my girls, and I am pleased, to say the least. I believe that what has happened in this school district in the last 7 years has been almost miraculous, and I know that Teresa Weather O'Neill has her stamp on this school district, and I am just not in any position at this point to say that I could look at either one of these gentlemen, although they're very qualified and very intelligent and well-educated, but I am not in a position to make a decision. I have talked to, like Jen talks to all these important people, I talk to the popcorn ladies, and so the popcorn ladies give me a good idea of what, what's going on in the trenches, as well as my friends who are on the support staff and the teachers and so on. So, but I have not talked to one of those folks yet who just says, oh, make sure you hire Dr. Horton or make sure you hire Dr. Talley. It's like, what do you think? And my response has been, well, I'm working on this, and I'm considering the possibilities. But I heard over and over again that there are other candidates, other people who could do this job and do this job well. And so at this point, I am not going to lobby for either candidate. I think we need to step back, take some time, look at what's out there, and see what we can do from here.
Well, there's no one else for me to ask to speak, so
Can't put it off, Christian.
can't put it off. So this process is one that I want to be sure that everyone understands that my colleagues and I have taken very, very seriously. And so there's always the core of what's really happening, and then there's noise on the edges. And sometimes that noise on the fray is loudest. And so I've heard interesting things all week long and seen interesting posts from people who are basically like, hey, get my attention over here, whether I'm telling the truth or not. But I just want to confirm, for whatever my word is worth, that this board has done the work and been very intentional about including the community and the people in the district in that work. I have spent a tremendous amount of hours every day, every week, very close to this process. And I appreciate the people who support me, who allowed me to do that, to take that time to be absent since January to really do this work. And so when I considered the point that we're at now, I looked back at that process, and I do have, as being a person who I would dare say has been closest to this process, I speak from a little bit of a different point of view, and that doesn't take away from anyone else's part in this. It is the nature of the role that I agreed to do at the beginning of the year, and the role that I appreciate my colleagues supporting me in. And so I've had a little bit of a different view in each step of this. And I do think that there are things that could have been done much differently and that we learned on the way. With that being said, when it comes down to this, I did a very deep dive of all the input, which is why on Monday I was really, really urging that we had time to do that, because it was designed in a way where we wanted to hear from the stakeholders. And so I did a deep dive, and then throughout the week we were receiving additional input. And in distilling all of that, I did not see a clear person. And so when we use language, I do believe that each candidate is amazing in his right, but when we use the language of highly qualified, that, to say they're highly qualified, but I don't choose one, that leaves, for people who are not very, very engaged in this process, that leaves some lost interpretation. Like, what do you mean? If they're qualified, then you choose one. And I think that rhetoric can be used against us. So I want to take a moment to dive into that and say that, A, we're not here to destroy either of the candidates. So you won't hear us bash a candidate, because I do believe that each man has built an amazing career and that they have taken the time to invest in their career, which means that they're qualified and they're right. When I look at what is qualified for our district, though, those standards may differ. I took some time. my last remarks for Monday's meeting were that I wanted to dive into some data, because that is what we're saying. We're saying that the programs, the initiatives, the growth that a certain candidate saw is what was really compelling some of us to lean towards him. So I did some dives into the data and did some comparisons to where our district currently is and the growth that was seen in other districts. And there's not much difference. In many cases, in the areas that the growth was seen, GRPS is still ahead of that growth. And it was aggregated by math and by reading and by test scores. So I'm not here talking about a gut feeling, but if we're talking about data, I broke it down to some data. And I didn't see the tremendous leaps and bounds that were told to me. And I'm happy to share information. There's no hoax going on. This is data, and that's what I took it back to. Outside of that, our most engaged stakeholders. I have a 14-year-old daughter, and I've always said that she is my biggest investment. She's where I put most of my money, most of my time. I let her know, like, you are my retirement plan. This is going to work. And so some of our most engaged stakeholders that range from parents to administrators to teachers to foundations to unions, I spent an egregious amount of time this week speaking with them. And as many of my colleagues have said, there was a lot of, if we have to work with, we will choose this. If you decide that for us. But we think that there is better out there. And I can attest to the process that I think there's a better way to go about the process. And that is not a pointing blame on anyone, because I think that this allowed us to see. So we held this community engagement in the beginning, and I think everyone there was kind of saying, like, this is what we might like to see in someone. So we took that and let that guide us. But now we're at the point where, you know, when the rubber meets the road, where people are like, this is what I need. This is what I need to see. And it's created this very clear picture of what is needed. And January's picture, December's picture, was a little bit more cloudy. It was like, this is what may be nice. And so I'm not saying that anyone did anything wrong in the process, but now I'm saying I see a difference in what happened and what could have happened to provide candidates that we were just really compelled by, instead of saying, if I have to work with, I can. Both candidates have strengths, but that is where I'm left with. There was strong responses saying that I don't feel like either of these candidates are the person. And so that is where I currently stand. And so at this point, we do have differences of opinion, but I would like to move forward and see if there's anyone who would like to make a motion for our next steps.
I would like to make a motion. I would like to move that we step back and look for other options.
Do we have a second to that?
I'll second that motion.
Reverend Matthias, when you're ready.
Okay. Ms. Shotke,
Yes.
Ms. Williams,
No.
Dr. Baker,
Yes.
Ms. Davis,
Yes.
Dr. Flores,
No.
Ms. Lewis,
Yes.
Reverend Matias, yes. Mr. Ross,
No.
President Grant,
Yes.
the yes carries.
So at this point, I would love to have some discussion about what next steps look like for us. This is an unscripted part of the of the meeting, so if there's anyone who feels like they have initial thoughts that they would like to share, I encourage that. Or
I think next steps are apparent, really. Well, I shouldn't say apparent, but obviously there still needs to be some leadership for the district moving forward. If we're going back to the proverbial drawing board, that next leader obviously will not be identified prior to the retirement of our current leader. So there needs to be a discussion on what that leadership's going to look like moving forward for after July. And apparently, I don't think we have much options other than obviously some interim sort of situation. And then we also need to decide if, as far as generating a new pool, if there will be a different search firm, if we will, I think the next steps will be to collaborate with our current folks and get some recommendations on what their best thinking is, and make a decision from there if we'll follow that best thinking, or if we'll seek other thinking, I suppose. I think that's really the two decisions that need to be made right now.
okay,
Well,
I'm not sure that we're
maybe
ready
not
to
made
make
right now. I'm
those
sorry.
decisions
I
right
don't
now.
mean make them right now, but those are not right now as in this moment, but as far as decisions that need to be made relatively soon.
Madam
would ven-
President, I would like to suggest that we do appoint some sort of an interim so that we have more time to consider our options and not feel as though come July 30th, everything's just on its own. So I think we need somebody in place, an interim. I also think that we need to encourage our own people here in the district, because I heard over and over and over again from popcorn ladies to support staff, teachers, and this has been my experience as an educator as well, that somebody from the outside's got an answer that nobody else has. And I lived those experiments where we left the district to find the perfect principal or the perfect superintendent. And, it wasn't any better or worse, but I also know that we overlooked a lot of good people. And I think in some way we need to acknowledge the fact that Teresa Weatherall-Neal got here because she had the support of this wonderful cabinet, these wonderful people that work with her and for her, the wonderful teachers, the wonderful support staff. And I just feel so strongly that maybe if we wrote our description for who we're looking for, we might, in fact, encourage someone from the district.
So just looking
Okay,
at
I
our
would-
calendar, I feel like maybe we should look at a special work session.
Yes, so I would like to take a step back. It is my thought that we should not make decisions today, that we need to take some time to regroup, and that we don't take time to push one way very quickly. We need to regroup. These are my thoughts. And we do need to, these are my thoughts. I don't think that we need to fill this seat tomorrow. When I say this seat, this is technically the superintendent's seat. I don't think that we need to fill this seat tomorrow. Think that we have a week, some time to have some conversation and to decide what is the next step with the search firm and to get their expertise on that. Those are my thoughts. We have a meeting slated for Monday evening. We have the opportunity to build in a special work session. I think that those are options that we should take so that we have some time to give thought to the decision that was just made, because that was a big move within itself, and I don't think that we have to immediately make follow-up decisions.
I'd like to caution us as we move forward. As a person who was not seated on the board at the time, over the last few decades, I've seen and watched from that side the superintendent searches that we've had, and we've had people who have looked as though they were the perfect candidate, and they did not do our district any justice. And then we had the grumblings with regards to our current superintendent. Actually, based on the qualifications and what the job description that we have and what we have looked for, she would not have been a candidate selected either. So I urge us to move with caution, looking for that perfect fit as we go forward, because what may shine like gold may be fool's gold for us. And we have to take some inventory, because for us to be as stellar of a district as we are, we did not have one internal candidate step forward. And there has to be a reason why. And we have to do some inventory that maybe we are not as stellar as we think we are, that we didn't have an internal candidate step forward. And so, again, these are the things that I ask that this board look at and take caution as we move forward with our decision. I apologize to the public. I say that openly. I don't want you to feel as though we have wasted your time or your resources. I do believe this board, and I want to really acknowledge my colleagues have worked hard. We have deliberated, and we have really put in the work to try to do what we feel is right. And so while I do not necessarily agree with the vote, I want to acknowledge the work that has gone forward here of this board. And we are working deliberately and intentional for this community. So I apologize to anyone that necessarily feels like their voice wasn't heard. I encourage you to show up and come to our meetings, make public comments, make us aware of what your concerns or issues are beyond what we had from our initial community engagement process, and share with us your thoughts so that, again, we can move forward trying to work because we have another decision to make. And so your input in that area is important as well. Thank you, community. Thank you, staff. Thank you, students. I do believe together, if we continue to work together, we will find the right fit for us. Roll your sleeves up.
I too am very concerned. And I'm concerned about a pattern that I've witnessed in this district, being a retired, over 30 years, experienced educator, that we have traditionally placed interims into a position, and then, much like what happened before we had affirmative action years ago, after a person does the job for 3 or 6 months, we say, oh, well, we have the best candidate here. Why are we looking elsewhere? Let's put this person in there. And I think that sometimes, people have already established that scenario, have already, kind of crafted a narrative, and sometimes politics prevail in our district. At least that's been the history that I can attest to as a Grand Rapidian and as an educator with vast experience here in the district. And I think that's sad. I think that we need to look beyond Grand Rapids and the muster that we have here. And when we have two people who have their careers have demonstrated that they're educators with vast experience, in education, have been in the classroom, have certification, relate to the teaching experience, have proven themselves as principals, as area superintendents and deputy superintendent, such as Dr. Horton. And I know we've made the decision, but I think in some cases we've made the decision prior to this decision, and I think that's regrettable. I hope and I pray that we're able to find someone. To me, I don't care if the person is Hispanic, African American, white, Chinese, or anything. What I want to see is an educator that is capable of leading this district to a higher level of achievement. And if anybody can run this district, then you just go ahead and put anybody in that seat. But I don't think we want to settle for anything less than a qualified, experienced educator with a proven track record that can take this district to a higher level. And if we fail to do that, ladies and gentlemen, then we're going to fail this community. And I don't know about you, but I want to see 100% graduation rates. I want to see us compete with Forest Hills and Rockford and Byron Center and all of the districts surrounding us. And I believe that our children, who are mostly minority, and I'll use that term, racial, ethnic minorities, that they deserve to have a quality educational experience, and they deserve to have a leader who has been in the classroom, who's been an administrator at some point, and who's worked their way up to those levels of leadership. And they can lead this district to a higher level of performance, because we do not deserve to have the level of racial inequality that we have in this city today. And one of the things that I was very impressed with Dr. Horton, and I know that he has not been selected, was his commitment to racial equality, racial equity, and what his plan was for taking this district forward, not only in staff development, but in backpacking skills for students and making them demonstrate their abilities and what they were planning to do and the graduation rates that were accomplished, and then placing our children in a pathway to success where they were applying to college and having a success ratio that was greater than what we're doing now. And we can continue to defend Grand Rapids and how wonderful this place is and how wonderful the leadership has been, but I've seen it in its worst, and I've seen it in its best, and we can do better.
I do want to speak quickly, maybe not necessarily in direct response to Dr. Flores' comments, but since I did utter the word interim, I do think it's important off the heels of that to maybe clarify my thinking. I think I pride myself personally as being a maybe thoughtful yet action-oriented leader, and I think the handwriting on the wall for me as we gauge the temperature of the folks here on the board was that, at least maybe I misinterpreted, but I guess I didn't get a sense that with the current pool that we're going to be at a place where there is a unanimous confidence. And frankly, I'm assuming that Dr. Horton or Dr. Talley may be out there watching somewhere, and I would imagine that this is a position that one will want to come into with a feeling of unanimous support from a board. And I would imagine if I was in that seat, I very well may tell Dr. Green that I'm no longer interested. And based on that, that may be an erroneous assumption, I began to think about what are our next steps as a district, assuming that neither of those candidates would be available to us after today. And again, that may be an erroneous assumption, but that's what my thinking was when I uttered the word interim. So I guess I only want to say that to definitely clarify that by no means do I think any of us, and particularly myself, approach this with any preconceived perspective to move in that direction. I definitely respect the perspective of my colleagues and the several community folks who have asked us to put this on pause. I personally don't think we need to put it on pause. I think, frankly, we have to make a decision at some point. And again, I reiterate, I don't think we'll ever be at a point where we are 100% confident in that decision, sort of like parenting. I mean, you're never 100% confident. You make the decision that you think is best at the time. You hope for the best. You look back on it later and you assess, maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. But again, though, that's obviously where we are at this point. I'm hopeful personally that Dr. Talley would continue to have interest in leading our district. I'm hopeful that additional time would have my colleagues comfortable in moving in that direction. But I'm doubtful that that's going to occur at this juncture, and thus my thinking with those sort of action-oriented next steps. So I just want to clarify that, and yeah, I don't know what I just said. I'm sorry.
I just wanted to clarify
Yes,
that.
thank you very much. But that being what it is, I'm excited to continue to grind this out with my committed colleagues here, and at some point, obviously, we will make a decision. And similar to Dr. Flores, I do hope and pray that that decision brings fruitful results for the district, students, the families, the professionals, and the community as a whole.
Just a couple comments. One, I think it is important that we discuss at least what we're thinking now, so we can kind of think what others are thinking over the weekend and before we come back to this conversation on Monday. I do want to say, I think that one of the impacts of this search was that there was, and many people in the community know this and have talked about this, that there was an expectation of a strong internal candidate who decided not to be a candidate. I believe that, and I know for sure that this led to people that know us in West Michigan to choose not to apply because of this expectation that this internal candidate would be in the mix. And so as a result, I think that we lost people that knew us best and that could have been very qualified to be in the pool. And no one's at blame for that. I would say that, in a way, we got two decisions. It's what to do now to run the district after not July 30th, but June 30th, which is just a couple months away, and then how we do a search after that. And I would like to consider learning about how to do a targeted search where we identify strong candidates that meet the criteria and ask them to come forward in a different way than we did it this last time. We've learned a lot about how this looks. But in the meantime, I do think that we need a transitional interim. So the interim I see is a transitional, someone who will take us from where we are now and can work with the current superintendent and can prepare us for where we go next, because we won't have a next superintendent on July 1st. And so we do need an interim, and that is a transitory, transitional leader that will take us from where we are now to some point that we determine in the future, and that transitional interim can assist us with some of the technical expertise that we'll need in making the decision. So that's my thinking about this these next steps. But there's two next steps. One is choosing that interim transitional person, and then secondly, how to do the search later.
Can I ask a very transparent question of this board, this body? And that is, following on this concept of transitional interim, have we had any discussions with any individual currently in this district encouraging them to be the interim transitional superintendent? Has any one of us?
Are you asking us personally?
I'm asking us personally, yes.
Okay. I will be totally and completely transparent and say I have not had any conversations with any internal candidates about interim positions, none. I did have conversations with internal candidates about the fact that I would like him or her to apply for the job. Other than that, no, nothing about you'll be the interim, no.
I have been told by people in the administration that there's a candidate that would consider being an interim candidate, and I confirmed with that person if that person would be interested in being an interim candidate, an interim superintendent.
Dr. Flores, have not had those conversations, and I would hope, though, if we have this conversation going forward, that we would put some stipulations on if that person will be able to apply for the superintendent position as well. So if we, in full transparency and making sure we're not doing a shoe-in type of situation, that whoever is selected for that position is prohibited from applying for the actual position, is my thoughts.
Yeah, I have not had conversations with someone in regards to an interim superintendent, so.
Yes, no, I have been focused on the individual candidates. I haven't had those type of conversations. I haven't taken the conversation that we have as a board and gone to the community and asked them to shape their rhetoric around that. I have been working with my board and my colleagues.
For me, it's been about process. So as I became concerned with process, I asked and questioned what would the next steps be should we need to stop the process we've had and reopen a search, which would then require that there be interim leadership. So that is the context of conversations I've had as we've looked forward to what we may need to do next.
I have not.
Dr. Flores,
The question was, for transparency's sake and honesty with the community, has any one of us had conversations regarding a transitional superintendent or interim superintendent? And that was a question to each of the board members.
I have not pursued conversation about specifics in that regards. I have thought about the possibility of an interim, but I've been in districts where that's something that happens, and there's different ways to go about that. So I think that's something that we're going to have to decide as a board.
Madam President, I'd like to address that concern that you have, Dr. Flores, because you and I had this conversation last fall, correct?
Correct. And Ms. Lewis, when we had that conversation, that was you and I discussing what some communications had been made to you. I am concerned, obviously, about honesty and integrity and conversations that I've had with board members. And I think that should we have had that conversation about an interim, temporary interim, that really should come from the board members who have, like Dr. Baker, had those conversations, that it ought to be forthcoming. I have not had conversations with an individual from this district that is in a current administrative position, and I don't think it is appropriate to have done that prior to this process. But be that which it may, those who have will carry that in their conscience, and that's all I have to say about it at this point.
I don't understand that. My conscience?
No, I'm not talking about you and your conscience. No, I'm sorry. It was
All of our
a
conscience?
general statement, that's all. It was a general statement, because I've had conversations with individuals here that have indicated that they didn't have those conversations, and it just doesn't fit what has been attested to. And so my question is, you know, why are we having these conversations in advance of a decision that wasn't made here, that's just made here today? So those are the wonderings.
There was no decision. There was no decision in my mind that was made ahead of time. And I will tell you, and I did tell you last fall, that, you know, I felt very strongly about an internal candidate. And you said to me, you interview all of these, keep your mind open, look at everybody that we have, and, you know, go with what your heart tells you. And my heart tells me that we need to look a little more. And, you know, as far as this interim business is concerned, I mean, I had a conversation with another board member that might happen, but I did not have a conversation with any internal candidates about an intern.
So we are a body of 9. Not one of us has the ability to make a decision about this without the rest of us. And so I would like the community to know that had this vote been different, then that is the decision of the body that I am a part of. And that means that whatever that vote then is the work that I need to do to make sure we are successful. So what I mean is, had we decided to move forward with one of these candidates and I disagreed, my body said, well, no, we're taking this direction. So now it's my job to do my best work in the direction that we have agreed on. We have agreed tonight on the direction, and I will do my best work for this district in honesty and transparency to make the right choice for our children.
Amen.
I would say the same thing about my own role in this. And honestly, in integrity, I answered your question.
Thank you.
And was honest. And as a person who saw a community asking for us to reconsider, I started to think about what we would do afterwards. I had full intention and made it very clear that I was not interested in hiring an interim superintendent, that I myself wanted to hire somebody that was in this pool that would be a fantastic superintendent, and I didn't see that. That's how we got here today.
And I would say that when you're in a position of looking through all of this input and all of the qualifications, and you're at a spot where you're not decided, I think it's very natural to think, well, what if it ends up being neither of these? And it's very natural to worry about next steps and wonder and question who would be in place for that amount of time while we're starting this process over or moving forward with this process. So I definitely think it's very natural to at least consider who that person would be. However, I do think that there's multiple options as far as that goes, and districts deal with that in many different ways. And so I believe that we need to, as a board, explore all of those options and really consider what's best for us. And I have absolutely no preconceived opinion on that. I want us to have that very deep conversation as to what our next step is.
Thank you. So I would like to be clear that we are a body, and to my knowledge, no one knew what would be the consensus today. And so at times when people take the opportunity to create division or to plant seeds for people that would give question to that, it is discouraging because of the amount of work that has been put in, especially when some more than others are consistently investing more. And so what I would like to say is that I don't doubt the intentions of my colleagues. And I resent the taking the opportunity to do that. So I really want us to be able to have open and clear conversations and with each other here at this table. None of us had a script to this, so people being able to talk and think about what our next steps here, I believe wasn't a calculated move, but questions to ask. And we are put in the position of having to have those conversations with a YouTube live stream and other people in the room. And so it doesn't often come off as clean and crisp as if you were reading from a typed paper. And so I just felt the need to step back and say that, and to say that we are here thinking in the moment, we're speaking in the moment, and at home or in those seats, it may be like, okay, this person said this, they said this, what's the train of thought? But people are thinking as they speak, and that's the position that we're put in the effort of being transparent. We started this process by saying there are no closed meetings. We have not had one meeting that was closed. There was no closed session around this. And other people from other districts were like, well, you guys are gonna talk the whole time in front of the whole city, and they can go back and push replay and push repeat on something that you thought of in the moment, and that is what we chose to do. So I would also like to say that in this moment, I don't feel as if I personally owe an apology to the community, because what we each did was voted our heart, voted what we felt, and voted on the depth and the experience that we individually have, and it varies. And so that, by saying that, and as Ms. Shockey said, as we had varying opinions, it came down to one answer. And what I believe that is that although we thought we had two extraordinary men in front of us, we also felt that, and we heard back from the community, that our kids needed more. And so I don't see this as failed. I don't see this as pushing for some other alternative that was already decided, because believe me, there would have been a much easier way to get to that if there was. This has been hard. This has been taxing and grueling for me personally. And so by saying, let's do that again, that is jumping off one cliff to jump off another, in a sense of what that takes us through, what that takes our families through. And so what I'm saying is, we're committed enough to say that there's more. We hear from you all every day about what our kids deserve. Many of us talk about what our kids deserve every time we're here. And so what we have said is that we want to find what they deserve. I would love to see 100% graduation rates. I will be at every graduation shaking the hands of the children who are crossing that stage. I would love to see us all there, and to be a part of celebrating that as we move forward to increase those rates and do more. So I thank you for your input. It wasn't wasted. It wasn't lost. It got us here. We will continue to engage you as we move forward. I hope that you don't disengage, because we are still here doing the work. So we will work on what place this has in Monday's agenda. We may need to make some adjustments to Monday's agenda, and also if there is an additional work session that is needed. Would you all like to talk about a work session, look at schedules for a work session now? Is that needed?
I do want to make, before we transition, I do want to sort of underscore something that Ms. Shockey mentioned as far as this being a body and a team-oriented body. And I think, you know, as you alluded to, this has been very tough. This is obviously probably the most important decision that any of us would make as a board member. And I won't go so far to say that I'm resentful, but I do think it's important that all of us recognize and show some respect for the team-oriented process, show some respect for the difference of opinions that the 9 of us may have, and to think hard and long about the benefits of insinuating something other than genuineness in which folks may have approached this process. I think such insinuations provide no positive support in moving the process forward. I think it causes intrepidation, confusion, and frankly, anything other than promoting a team-oriented process moving forward. And considering that this is the most important decision that any of us will make as we sit at this table, I think value to the team is paramount, and any actions or statements that undermine that, I just think is frankly inappropriate. And I would ask all of us to think long and hard about our motivations and our intentions with every statement we make in regards to this process.
Okay, I would like to speak to scheduling a work session if that is needed. Do we have a general consensus that we'd like to schedule a work session? Would we like to do that now, or would we like to do that on Monday?
You mean schedule a work session for Monday, or
No,
schedule
on Monday.
on Monday, discuss when we
Come
schedule
with
it.
our schedules to schedule a work session. Okay, so I think that we can wait till Monday. Please, everyone, bring their schedules so we're ready for that. I don't have my, so meeting adjourned. Thank you.